I still remember the day my dog refused to step foot inside that secluded cabin. It was as if she sensed something was off about the place. I had tried everything short of dragging her in by the collar to get her to enter treats, toys, even calling her favorite name. But nothing seemed to work. It wasn't just a matter of being hesitant or anxious. She would actually back away from the threshold, tail tucked between her legs, as if it was some kind of dark magic at play. The worst part was that I knew she loved woods, and had always been the first one to explore, sniffing out every nook and cranny. I recall thinking about how this might be a one-off incident, but over the next few weeks, I took her on multiple walks around the cabin, hoping some kind of desensitization would kick in. But each time, the same thing happened. She'd get to within 10 feet of the door, and then suddenly veer off in another direction. One day, as we were walking past it, a strong gust of wind blew open the creaky front door. For a split second, I thought maybe this was my chance, but instead of running inside, my dog darted behind a nearby bush, staying there for several minutes before emerging again. That's when I started wondering if she had picked up on something specific about the cabin itself. At first, I brushed it off as paranoia, but as the days went by and the weather got colder, my fascination with this little mystery grew stronger. What was it that made her so terrified of that one place? Had some predator or other animal left a scent that I couldn't smell? I began to speculate about everything from bears to mountain lions, trying to imagine what kind of predator could be lurking within those woods. But the more I thought about it, the more my mind wandered back to another possible explanation, something much closer to home. What if she had sensed something truly unusual? What if someone had been inside that cabin just before we got there? It was a possibility I tried not to dwell on at first, but as the weeks turned into months and her aversion only grew stronger, it became harder to ignore. Had she somehow picked up on some kind of human presence? I'll never forget the day I finally pieced together what might have happened that fateful day, or rather, who might have been inside just before we got there. It was a piece of information I had almost dismissed as insignificant, but turned out to be crucial in unraveling this mystery. It's funny how sometimes our pets can sense things beyond our comprehension. My dog may never set foot inside that cabin again, but knowing what she sensed has changed me forever. I've come to realize just how little we know about the world and the creatures within it. As the months went by, I began to notice a change in my dog's behavior whenever we approached the cabin. She'd grow restless, her tail tucked between her legs, and no amount of treats or coaxing could get her to move forward. I tried everything from gentle encouragement to stern commands, but she refused to budge. I started wondering if there was something specific that triggered this aversion, so I began observing our surroundings more closely. Were there any scents or sounds that might be causing her distress? But no matter how hard I looked, I couldn't pinpoint anything out of the ordinary. It wasn't until I stumbled upon an old journal belonging to the cabin's previous owner that things started to fall into place. The entries were cryptic and often nonsensical, but one phrase in particular caught my eye. "They're still here." Who or what was this referring to? And what did it have to do with my dog's strange behavior? I spent hours poring over the journal, searching for any clues that might explain this mysterious statement. The owner had been a recluse, rarely leaving his cabin, and never speaking to anyone about its contents. But as I delved deeper into the entries, I began to piece together a story, one that would change everything. It seemed the owner had been researching some kind of phenomenon, one that involved a specific location within the cabin. He'd spent years studying it, documenting his findings in meticulous detail. And then, just when he was on the verge of making a groundbreaking discovery, something had happened. The entries grew increasingly erratic after this point. But one thing was clear. The owner had been consumed by some kind of obsession. He'd been searching for answers to questions I couldn't even begin to fathom. But what if my dog's aversion wasn't just about avoiding the cabin itself? What if it was about sensing something deeper? I thought back to all the strange occurrences surrounding this place, the unexplained noises at night, the eerie feeling that we were being watched whenever we stood outside. Could it be that there was more to this phenomenon than I'd initially thought? And what did my dog's behavior have to do with it? The owner had been researching some kind of entity, one that seemed to be tied to a specific location within the cabin. And as I read on, I realized that the entity might not have been just a figment of his imagination, but something very real. I was so caught up in my own investigation that I almost forgot about my dog's aversion entirely. But now, with this new information at my fingertips, I couldn't help but wonder if she'd picked up on something even more sinister than human presence. Something that would make her want to avoid the cabin at all costs. The more I read, the more questions I had. Was this entity something ancient, a supernatural force that had been awakened by some long-forgotten event? And what was its connection to my dog's behavior? As the sun began to set on another fruitless attempt to coax my dog into the cabin, I couldn't shake off the feeling that we were getting close to something big. But as the shadows grew longer and darker, I knew it was time to leave this place behind for now. We packed up our things and headed back home, leaving the cabin to its secrets once more. But as we drove away, I couldn't help but glance back at that foreboding structure, wondering what other mysteries lay hidden within its walls. The drive home was a quiet one, my dog's usual chatter replaced by an unsettling silence. I glanced over at her every so often, expecting some sign of relief or excitement now that we were leaving this strange place behind. But she just stared out the window with an intensity that unnerved me. We arrived back at our house and settled in for the night, but my mind kept wandering back to the cabin and what could have been causing my dog's bizarre behavior. I tried to push it aside, telling myself it was just a silly notion. But the more I thought about it, the more I became convinced that there was something real at play here. The next morning, I decided to do some research on local folklore and legends, hoping to find some clue or explanation for what we'd experienced. As I sat at my computer, scrolling through dusty old websites and online forums, one phrase kept popping up: the shadow in the woods. Apparently, it was a recurring theme in stories from this area, a mysterious presence that seemed to move of its own accord, leaving behind an aura of unease and fear. The more I read, the more I realized that our encounter at the cabin might not have been so unusual after all. I turned to my dog, who was lying nearby, and watched as she suddenly sat up straight, her ears perked and alert. She looked right at me with an almost human-like intensity, as if warning me about something. And then, in a move that still makes the hairs on the back of my neck stand on end, she turned and slipped out of the room, disappearing into thin air. I stared after her, frozen in confusion and awe, wondering what other secrets she might be hiding from me. But as I stood there, trying to process what I'd just seen, a faint rustling sound came from deeper within the cabin, followed by the soft thud of something heavy being moved. My dog reappeared in the doorway, her eyes fixed intently on some point behind me, and I turned to see what had caught her attention. A small, hidden compartment had swung open, revealing a dusty old key attached to a frayed leather strap. The shadow in the woods suddenly seemed all too real, and I wondered if my dog had just led me into something much bigger than I ever could have imagined. I stepped forward, trying not to startle whatever or whoever might be behind that hidden compartment. But my dog stood firm, her gaze fixed on some point beyond the doorway. The air inside the cabin seemed to vibrate with an almost palpable energy, and I could feel the hairs on the back of my neck rising once more. I took a deep breath and approached the open compartment, my eyes scanning the surrounding area for any sign of what might have triggered this mysterious sequence of events. The key hung suspended from its strap, as if waiting to be taken, but there was no clear indication of what it unlocked or what purpose it served. My dog's attention remained fixed on something deeper within the cabin, and I followed her gaze, trying to pinpoint what had caught her attention. As I peered into the shadows, a faint glint of metal caught my eye. An old lantern, its glass shade cracked, but still reflecting the dim light that filtered through the windows. I reached out to pick it up, feeling a shiver run down my spine, as I realized that this must have been what triggered the hidden compartment's release. The lantern was surprisingly heavy for its size, and I wondered if it might be more than just a simple relic of the past. As I lifted it off the shelf, the air in the cabin seemed to change, as if the very atmosphere had shifted in response to my actions. My dog took a step closer, her eyes still fixed intently on some point beyond me, and I felt a creeping sense of unease begin to spread through my chest. I turned to examine the lantern more closely, running my fingers over its intricate metalwork as I tried to piece together what this might all mean. The key was attached to the leather strap by a simple rivet, but it looked old, much older than the cabin itself. A faint smudge of dust on one edge of the key caught my eye, and I realized that it must have been recently disturbed. Someone, or something, had handled this key in recent memory, and that thought sent a shiver running down my spine. My dog's eyes were still fixed intently on some point beyond me, and I began to wonder if she was trying to tell me something. But what? Was it the key itself? or something deeper within the cabin. I took another step forward, feeling the air in the cabin thicken with anticipation as I peered into the shadows. And then, just as I thought I might finally be onto something, my dog's ears suddenly pricked up, and she let out a low growl, a warning that seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. I froze, feeling the hairs on the back of my neck stand on end once more as I realized that we were no longer alone in this cabin. My mind racing with possibilities, I tried to take another step forward, but my dog's growl grew louder, a low rumble that vibrated through the air. She was standing firm, her paws planted wide apart, as if trying to block something from moving closer. I strained my ears, but there was no sound beyond the creaking of old wooden beams and the distant hum of insects outside. The silence was oppressive, making every snap and groan seem like a warning sign. But then, just when I thought I'd never get any closer, a faint noise caught my attention, the soft thud of footsteps, muffled but unmistakable, coming from somewhere deeper within the cabin. My dog's growl grew more intense, as if she was trying to tell me to stay back. I hesitated, weighing the risks, but something compelled me to move forward, ever so slowly, my heart pounding in my chest like a drumbeat.